You may have a good handle on time. You might even know how to maximize each minute to do your very best work. But how often do you think about the amount of time that you really need for each task? Maximizing your time becomes particularly important when you find yourself limited by working harder instead of working smarter. So let's talk about how we could try to flip that on its head using Parkinson's law. Parkinson's law originally came into being in 1955 when British historian Cyril Parkinson first noticed the growing number of inefficiencies caused by large bureaucracies. He first mentioned the law in an essay published by The Economist, which later became the focus of his book Parkinson's Law: The Pursuit of Progress. The law has been expressed as work expands so as to fill the time available for its completion, which means that if you give yourself a week to complete a 2-hour task, then inevitably the task will increase in complexity and become more daunting so as to fill that week. You may not even fill the extra time with more work, but instead you might stress about having to get it done during that time. If you think about it, this sounds a lot like the microeconomics demand curve, where instead of price and quantity, we have output and time. As time spent on a task increases, one would imagine that the efficiency of output would decrease. The thing I've realized about Parkinson's law is that it's best used as counterfactual thinking, or as an applied imagination question, which basically means asking yourself, what if you had less time? This becomes useful because it allows you to force your brain to run based on your self-imposed time constraints. Constraints force us to revisit the conventional approach of doing things and make improvements in order to overcome the challenge that's arisen. The fact is that we always negotiate with others or with ourselves for extra buffer because we have an inflated idea of how long a task takes to complete. It's fairly obvious that this shouldn't be used to set unreasonable deadlines for yourself. The more complex the project, the more time it typically takes. So, for example, something that doesn't take any time is hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel for more videos like this every week. Now, in order to try and make use of my time more efficiently, I wanted to see how I could implement the Parkinson's law for myself. The way I approached this was to start by listing out my tasks and then assigning each one with the amount of time I thought it would take to complete. Once that was done, I divided those individual times in half and started on the task. The trick here is that you have to view the time limit as crucial and treat it like any other deadline that's unbreakable, just like the deadlines that your boss or client set for you. If you work at a computer, a digital timer is going to be very useful when you start doing this. It'll also save you a bit of time because a timer allows you to see at a glance how much longer you have. One of the apps that I'd recommend is an app on your desktop called Be Focused, which keeps a timer on your screen as you work through your task. If you try this out, you'll observe that deadlines have a dramatic effect on the speed with which you produce your work. Given a week's notice to write a 1,000-word article, for instance, you'll spend at least half that time writing the article. You'll use the rest of the time to do extensive research and then meticulously edit your work. In my experience, a majority of the time is used to get inspiration before I actually get down to the writing. On the other hand, your approach changes dramatically when you have a one-day deadline. You obtain just a few facts from research, have an idea of what you want to say, and simply write what you know. It's likely that it won't be as flawless as when you used more time, but it's certainly good enough. So my advice would be to look for those little time fillers, like email or browsing through social media. Things that you might usually think take 10 or 20 minutes, and instead of doing your casual 20 to 30 minute morning email check, give yourself 5 minutes and proceed from there. By assigning the right amount of time to a task, we gain back more time, and the task will reduce in complexity to its natural state. You can experiment with the Parkinson's law and squash your deadlines down to the bare minimum in many areas of your life. Just be conscious of the line between bare minimum and not having enough time. What you're aiming for is a job well done in less time, not a disaster that's going to lose you your job or clients. All of this comes back to the practice of not necessarily working harder, but working smarter. Especially today when our attention is divided and so easily lost, it might serve us well to use Parkinson's law to safeguard our most valuable resource: time. Alright guys, that's all for me today. I hope that you can use Parkinson's law to try and get back some of the time that you spend on tasks that don't necessarily need that time. Drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel. I hope that you enjoyed this. Thanks so much for watching. My name is Vihan Shalaya. I'll see you next week.